Welcome back to Word Blindness. This is Juliet Hahn here with my co-host, Brent Sopel. How are you? Good morning. Happy Monday. It looks like the sun is shining.
Yeah, since since I got fired from that shitty job I was at, the sun's been shining every day. So
It has.
God was telling me something.
Because you needed to clear, right? You needed to clear that negativity. And then I go unicorn. But it's really true. We're gonna just to give the listeners kind of an update. Today we're gonna go a little bit, it's associated with dyslexia because we talk about traumas. We talk about how you had trauma and we all have trauma, right? When you're dyslexic in school, there's some sort of trauma that's happening. Sometimes people don't even realize it, but it's the stuff that we internalize it. And one of the things that we say all the time, and then, we laugh about it now, but it's like, you can't stuff your traumas because they're going to come out somewhere. And they could come out bad. It doesn't matter. It could be late. It could be early. And so we got into a pretty interesting discussion when I was away this weekend in Vegas. And then we decided that it might be kind of an important thing to talk about, but I will say this is really uncomfortable for me because this is a part of my life that I've really never shared publicly because it has to do with a family member of mine. And so I haven't really gone out because the other family member is a little sensitive. And so it's one of these things that I've kind of kept close. My family and friends know. No. And it's also like, there's many times because my sister who, suffered with addiction really badly. And it really probably stems from, she was adopted when she was 3. I think there's probably, mental illness somewhere in her family, but we went through a pretty crazy time with her. Really, really crazy. And again, people close to my heart know the story, but it's not something I really talk about because she's doing really well. She's done a lot of work on herself. And it's one of those things I never wanted to kind of have something out in the public and then it made her be sensitive. But we're now dealing this with her son, who is an addict. And I found out when I was in Vegas, he was missing. And I actually thought he was dead. I'm surprised that I'm not hysterical crying right now, but I think it's because I did a lot of that. And I thought this was it. And we went through a lot of those times with her throughout my life. And it just brought up a lot of stuff. My sisters and I kind of talked about, okay, this is bringing up stuff. We found out that he was not dead, thank God. But he got arrested for buying drugs. And we all thought that he was clean for a number of years. And you get all these feelings, a lot of feelings. Like, what are you talking about? Wait, no, he's been doing really well. Okay. And then you start thinking, wait, when I was with him, he seemed to not been like, and so then you just start going down this path. And then you worry about, okay, I'm worried about my sister now. Now I'm worried about my mom. Now I'm worried about my brother who has the biggest heart and they all live in the area that he is in. And it just brings up a lot of stuff. So we started talking because you have some experience, as we talk about. Brent has lived 1,000 lives. But my nephew has had a lot of trauma. My sister went through a lot. My mom raised my nephews for a while. And he's never dealt with that as I was saying to you, I think he has the addictive personality. There's mental illness. There's a lot of different things that I think, was never diagnosed. And you had this different view that you've talked about many times. But for me, I was like, okay, I'm angry, but then I'm sad. And then I feel sad that I'm angry. Then I feel guilty that I'm angry. And then I have these feelings that I'm stuffing. And then I also have these feelings of, I can't believe we're here again. And then again, the protective of, okay, I'm fine. I've done my work because I had to separate myself from my sister for a period of time because I went through a lot when I was in college with her, with my other nephew, and it just brings all of this stuff up. So I thought, you know what? I'm going to talk about it today because a lot of the stuff that we have talked about has been really healing, even though I have done a lot of healing, but this podcast has been super healing for me. Which I don't want to say surprised me, but did kind of. Like I was like, oh wow, okay. I thought I was really doing, I thought I was really healed, and then things come up, and then they came up a little, like the IAP. You guys can go back and listen to all those things. I was like, no, I'm fine with that. But then as we are talking more, it was bringing things to the surface, and so that's kind of where I am in this journey. And again, I keep saying it's not my story to share. And that's what I've been saying for my whole life. It's not my story to share, but it's always been kind of protecting my sister because I never wanted to hurt her feelings.
Yeah.
And hurt her in a way because, I love her and I care about her. And she has done some really amazing work on herself.
It's, there's a lot to unpack and, in all that. And if you have never been addicted, you'll never understand. So I always say, First Avenue, Second Avenue. There's a reason why there's some AA and Al-Anon. It's something, and I talk about this, every time we're on here. It's to understand the relatability. Every single one of us has trauma. Now, what depth is that trauma? Were you abandoned? Were you what trauma is that? And if you don't go back, in AA, there's something called a dry drunk. It's somebody who stops drinking but doesn't go back to work on their trauma. And I'd rather have a drunk than a dry drunk.
I've never heard of that term.
Yeah, does that make sense though? It's because they're sitting in, there's, at least, I love doing drugs. Oh my God, I'm the best. I love drinking. Amazing. Because I didn't have to feel these feelings. Obviously at my height, I'd wake up Friday morning, go to bed Sunday night. 48 hours, 50 hours straight drinking and drugs. Amazing. Because I didn't feel the feelings. So that's, you keep going, you sober up, you go back out. Why? Those feelings suck. It sucks to remember, is it the abandonment? Is it the loneliness? Whatever that feeling is wrapped around in that, all that, it sucks. It does. Mm-hmm. And that's why that's why drinking and drugs, I always say amazing. Homeless people, 85% of homeless people are homeless because of a death. Somebody died and they couldn't handle that. Then they lose a job, then drugs and everything else. What started it?
Spirals. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So it's the understanding, it's the relatability of that situation and what goes with it. And there's a lot to unpack in every single instance. What kind of drugs are they on? I always tell people, obviously they're talking about fentanyl, lace, and everything. You normal people, if you see somebody take drugs and die, you're going to run the other opposite way. We're running to that because we want that high. People are like, what are you talking about? That's not that. That's how it works. So when I talk about this, it's to try and make sense of it all. You'll never fully understand. Same thing with the dyslexia, ADHD. You'll never fully understand. But the more we can understand everything, the more, the better the world will be. And my term is clean out the closets. How do you clean out those closets? And what does that mean? It's talking about it. You just mentioned that this podcast, it's been healing. It's been healing for me too. But you have to talk about it. Now, if that's to a girlfriend, a friend, a counselor, a therapist, whatever. I had somebody, one of the parents of a dyslexic kid we just recently connected with, the dad's, in the worst place than the kid. And he's like, how do I start? We've already started. You just didn't even know it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not like it's chapter 1. Okay, we're on page 2. Now we're on page 3. We're on page 4. No, that's not how it works. But you have to talk about it, and you have to be real about it.
And once you start, it does become easier.
Yeah,
but it's that starting.
It's just like anything else, and starting that first job, or starting that new school, or you're starting that new sports team that you moved to a new city with, or change is always the hardest. But usually usually at the end it's the best. And is it hard to get going? Who wants to sit there and relive it? No, nobody. But if you don't, you're not living a complete life. You sent me something like you're on the plane. You're talking about your 2 best days. First is day 1 when you're born. And I can't remember what you said. And I said the second one is the day you fall in love with yourself.
Yeah, I said the day you're born, and the second was the day you find your purpose.
Yeah, and my expansion of that is you can't find your purpose if you don't love yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're not true to yourself, and you're not asking, the heart and the hard questions that that we're talking about to be able to dig further enough down to find what that that purpose fully is, or to be able to achieve that that full purpose is. But if you can look in the mirror and love yourself, now you love yourself through everything you've gone through. How you look. I don't like my nose. I don't like my hair. Women look in the mirror and I don't like this. I want to change this. No, God made you perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Each and every one of us. Perfect in his eyes. Now, once you can see yourself in that, life changes. Because then you don't hang on to the stupid things. You don't hang that somebody gave me a weird look, or this doesn't fit me the right way, or you don't hang on to those things, because living for the moment is the hardest thing in the world. Because we don't know if we're going to be. I don't know if I'm going to be here tonight. You might die driving to hockey tonight. I don't know. So I always say you can't change the past or the future, only the right now. And that comes with that understanding of everything around us. Like we were talking about the Super Bowl last night. Painful, awful, slow. Football sucks. Too slow. But the couple commercials that the NFL had put out there about bullying, they talked about trying to make change. But how can you change something if you don't understand what why were you bullied? What was going on? I always say you don't see anybody bullying a kid in a wheelchair or blanket, because they have some understanding. But when it talks to health, that is a big topic right now. Is that learning disorders? Is that bipolar? Is that anything? Psychosis? I'm the best psychosis doctor. No, you're not. You've never had it. You don't know. So everything comes with understanding and relatability, and that's what you said just a few minutes ago. It's not your story. My pain, my trauma, my story is not about me. It's about who might hear this and who it might help.
Well, and that's why you've always said that. And so I stopped and was like, you know what? And there's so many different angles I want to go. There's so many things I want to say, because one of the things that connected, not just our dyslexia, but when you said there's no such thing as a bully or a class clown, I've been saying that for years. Mm-hmm. Like, why doesn't anyone when a kid is starting to be a goof, or a kid starting to pick on someone, Why don't we get to the bottom of it? What's happening? Is it home life? Is it school? There's no 5-year-old or 6-year-old, 7-year-old, whatever, whenever it starts, even a little bit older, no kid is doing that. High school, no kid wants to be that dick or that mean girl. There's something behind it. And if we can get to that, and that's why, this particular nephew of mine is not dyslexic, but has had a lot of trauma and a lot of things that he hasn't dealt with, And so I said to you, I think it is important that I talk about it because it is something that I haven't, talked about. But, growing up and, in my later life when my sister was addicted, I can talk to people about my situation in that and, what came with that and the trauma that came with that for me. Um, and there's a lot of it because it was a different world for me. I mean, I think I said to you, it was like literally like that part of my life is like a Hollywood movie. Like we're pretty normal people, but this part of my life is really not. Um, and it's there's a lot of it that I've gone very numb about. I think when I was like, I'm not crying, I was like, it actually doesn't surprise me because I've done a lot of work in it because of there's a time where you can't save someone. And I was the person that I always wanted to say, like, I always wanted to help her. What can I do? What can I do? What can I do? How can I make this better? Like, how can I make you better? Because I see you, I see the person that you are. I see the person that you can be, but I couldn't save her. Right. She needed to save herself. And it's because really, as you said, she didn't love herself and she had all this trauma, from whatever, before she ever came with us, when she came with us, whatever it is. And I said, it's important that I do talk about this because I know that it can help someone. I know someone can listen to this and be like, holy crap. Okay. And it's so tied into your message of self-esteem and trauma and things that we've talked about. Like, you need to not stuff, you need to deal with it because it's going to come out somewhere. And you're not helping anyone until you can have these conversations. So I said to you, this is something, I mean, for years, like, I have never talked about it like on these platforms. It's always because I didn't want to, I never wanted to say anything that was going to set her off, right? And maybe be the one that was like, "Oh my God, I set her off, and now she went back to this life." Now I know she's strong enough that she won't, because again, she's done a lot of work on herself. Is there more work that we always all can do? 100%. But seeing my nephew, seeing my kids and my nieces and other nephews, what this has done to them. And how each of them has dealt with it and talked about it, this recent relapse, and us not, a lot of the younger kids didn't know that we couldn't find him because it was like, I was going to say something and then, I think you even said, you don't know any answers. So why are you going to say something? And I was like, you're right. Because I'm like, because my kid's going to know because I'm super distracted, but okay, let me decompartmentalize. I didn't think I was going to be able to say that today. And I did. I decompartmentalized. I put that kind of back in my side because we had a really big weekend. I was, doing a lot of work this weekend, but it sat on my brain like, oh my gosh, is this it? Is this the time we're going to be like, okay, now we're having a funeral for this 30-year-old kid that, almost had a perfect score in his SATs, was a college athlete and got injured, took opiates for the pain, and it just went. And as you said, I mean, he's had a lot of trauma. And it was like, I don't have to think about this anymore. And, there was, my mom was like, don't do this because of your parent, your family's addictive personalities. And that's what we've always said. Like, you can't do it because you have an addictive personality. You have that gene. But then when I talked to you and you said, and this is before you kind of knew if there was trauma. And I was like, oh yeah, there's a lot of trauma there. And you're like, okay, it's not, it's an addicted personality or gene. It's because he's never dealt with, he's hiding from himself, right? He's numbing himself.
I always, I've got some different takes on on things. I always have it. Obviously, the self-esteem angle. When we first started talking, you weren't quite understanding it. And this is another one. The addictive personality and drugs or alcohol abuse. Is hereditary or is a disease. I look at it, both from completely differently than most people. It all comes from trauma. It's all trauma based. In my mind, if you grew up with an alcoholic, of course you're abused. They're obviously drinking. They're out of their mind doing whatever. So it's not it's not a learned behavior. You see it, but it's your trauma. You're abused. Drug and alcohol. You're abused. Now, most people that grew up in a house, addiction, they're either identically the same or the complete opposite. Like living with an alcoholic, either you're going to be the same or never touch it. There's really, I've never come across, either or, but it's the addictive personality. It's, if you got trauma, I want to get away from it. There's no two ways about it. There's now addictive personality. What are they addicted to? Let's take that step back. The why. What's they enjoy doing crazy things. Okay, is that the ADHD that we talked about?
Right, jumping off cliffs and stuff like that. Right, the adrenaline. Right, the
dopamine. Skiing. Remember when you went skiing? You text me. I love going straight down. All right,
as fast as I can.
That's not the that's the adrenaline. Yeah. The dopamine, that's getting the dopamine. That goes back to the understanding of what ADHD, and what that is, completely bouncing off the walls or like, there's just the full understanding of what's going on, so it's that feeling of getting away from that trauma or that trauma, are sitting in that classroom and nobody understands you, right? So you're sitting there alone, right? The relatability. Nobody, I relate to nobody. I want to escape. Why would I want to sit here and let's just use a classroom for an example. There's 24 other kids. Why would I want to sit here when nobody understands me? I'm sitting here by myself. Like, why would I want to do that? Of course I want to escape. How do you escape? Right. And that's, drugs and alcohol are the quickest and easiest escape. There's a reason why, dyslexic side, 50% of us, dyslexics in the world are in prison for a reason. We want to escape. We don't want to sit there and get laughed at. So it's understanding why would we want to be there. We got nobody. I can't relate. I can't talk to anybody. You're weird, right? That relatability, the understanding, the trauma, it all comes back to it. Now, you talk about opiates. There's benzos, there's opiates. Those are downers, marijuana downers, alcohol downers. Then the uppers, cocaine, Molly, ecstasy. And that's what I loved. I never smoked pot as a kid. I've done it like 4 or 5. It's awful. I don't like it. I like to be up. I love to be up, cracked out for up for 4 or 5 straight days. But there's only 2 things you can die from detoxing: alcohol, and benzos. Opiates, that's that's your pain pills, your hydros, your oxycontins, right? And heroin. So people go to that heroin when they can't get the pills anymore.
And that's what happened to my nephew.
And because it's cheaper and easier to get. And I think the stat is 94% of people die from heroin by ejecting it once, meaning, at some point in time in your life, you will die from it. Not meaning the first time, maybe the second time, and the way it happens a lot is that you get sober and you go back out and you use that first time the same amount that you did when before you got sober. And NOD. And obviously fentanyl's laced with everything because it's an amazing high. But the difference is doctors don't know what this all means. You can be addicted in 2 days. Those pain pills, you take a pain pill. I always talk about the highs. Obviously the uppers, the Molly and the ecstasy, the coke, you're up bouncing around, right? You're flying around 100 miles an hour, partying, staying up. But the pain pills, the opiates, it's almost like medicine head. You can see your vision that commercial. I don't know what commercial it was when you talk about medicine head and your head goes, off
big.
like a little,
like a balloon.
Balloon, right?
Yeah, I think it was for like a cold medicine, right?
Yeah, exactly. But take away your pain in that balloon and it's gone. So you're relaxed and that pain is gone within minutes. So I'd be like, holy fuck, this is amazing.
So you're basically out of your own head.
Correct. Then within, again, minutes, right? So you go for a surgery and I walked, a buddy of mine, really good friend of mine, a number of years ago. What did he have? He had his hip replaced. He was single, so I stayed with him for a couple of weeks. And since I've been in that hospital with so many surgeries, I was waking up every 2 hours, set my alarm for him, and we're rotating. We had Tylenol, Advil, and then pain medicine. So we're every 2 hours. The prescription was take every 2. I think hydrocodones. I think they were. Every 4 hours. So when I got up, I was only giving him 1. Advil, 2 hours, 1 hydro, and kept that rotation. And everything's fine, gone through, doing well. A couple years later, I don't know if he had his knee or his other, it might have been his other hip replaced, and he was dating another woman, and she kind of took care of him. Kind of same type of thing, same regimen, but it said on the bottle, it said, give him 2. So she was giving him 2. I talked to him, on the 3rd day, how you doing? He goes, why am I sweating? He was addicted.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, what do you mean? So I walked him through. He goes, why were you only giving me 2? Because I'm like, I've lived it. I know this world. I understand this world. I understand what you need, what you want, right? And completely differently than the nurses and the doctors have no bedside manners because they've never been in that bed. But that's how quick it took. So I took it away from him. From there, it took him, 2 or 3 days of, sweating and, the shakes. And, somebody else I talked to the other day, they're like, by the 3rd day, I was counting how many pills were in that bottle, how long I knew, that was only the 3rd day. They're counting how many pills are in there.
But that's because your body gets addicted before is that like, because this is your body gets addicted before your mind gets addicted? Or before you realize, because it's taking your pain away, but like your physical pain. But then when someone has trauma and then they realize, okay, this is also taking this away and their body's already addicted, that's when it's like massive shit show. Because you hear people say, and am I correct on that?
Yeah. And that's how quick it takes your body can get addicted to those opiates, within days.
Yeah, which is crazy. And I think I told you the story. My middle son had surgery. He had something called silent sinus syndrome. We found it because he was getting a palate expander. Did I ever tell you this? He was getting a palate expander. This is crazy. And they had to do the X-ray of his whole head. And I usually, every time you go to the dentist, they always want to take X-rays. And I'm like, okay, you guys just X-ray too much. Like, you don't need to fucking X-ray all the time. So I was always the mom that was like, no, 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 no. So the doctor was like, we have to do it for the palate expander. Like, I need to make sure that, and I was like, fine. So when they
What the
did
hell is
it,
a palate expander?
it's the thing that you have to churn and it opens your whole, it's like, it's torture. I had it when I was like in 9th grade. You basically get a big space in between your teeth, but it opens your whole mouth. So like you could sleep better. It's like opens your, I don't know.
Really?
But it's basically, it's like a torture. You have a key and you have to open it. It basically opens your, like breaks your palate like up there. Yeah. It's crazy. Anyways, it's very well, I mean, it's used in orthodontics and back even when I was, cause I had it. So when they took the X-ray, they saw he had a bone in his sinus that was literally like the smallest amount that could go, and it was really sharp that could stab his eye. So they were like, you know what? You need to go to the doctor. They're like, do you see this? And I was like, this is crazy. And his one sinus was open. The other had this big bone. So he had no sinus here. And then he had like, sinuses are very interesting. Like I didn't realize this. Everyone's sinuses are different. Everyone had like, it didn't matter that this one was shaped. He's never had a breathing problem, never had asthma, like nothing. So I was like, oh, this is weird. So we went to a, ear, throat, nose doctor. And then we had to go to like a surgeon that just does this. And basically they were like, I forget the percentages of, if you don't take care of it, and as his face continues to grow, there's a chance that bone is going to stab him in the eye. I was like, okay, that sounds awful. Or what's going to happen is it's going to open and his eye is going to get sucked into the hole because there's no hole. And I was like, okay.
This is the black hole? Is the abyss? Or what is this?
So weird. I mean, these are like the weird little things. I remember I told you there's like weird, odd things that always happen in our lives. So and the whole reason I'm telling you the story is we opted to get the surgery because I was like, I don't want to have to get the surgery if we don't need it. I'm not just someone that like, I know surgeons like to do surgery. So they kind of say, yeah, you need it, but sometimes you don't need it. So I'm the person that asks the questions. And Dan kept looking at me and I'm like, no, I want to know all these. So basically, finally to the surgeon who was like, out of NY, he was in New York. I mean, but he literally specializes in this. And he's like, usually we don't see this in kids this young. It's usually when older because it's not caught. And it's called silent sinus syndrome because it's silent. And until their face grows, then the eye's sucked in or the eye's stabbed. So you're really lucky that you found this. And I was like, okay, this is insane. He's like, I said to him, if this was your child, would you do it? And he said, I would. And he gave us all the reasons and the statistics. And I was like, fine. Anyways, after the surgery, they even took the bone. And I mean, Truman was like, I didn't realize he could, it could breathe different, but he was like, oh, afterwards, he's like, oh, that's interesting. I can breathe a little bit more on this side. They removed it. I had said to the doctor, we're not giving him painkillers. And the doctor was like, this is really, really, really painful. You need to give him Oxy. And he gave me 5 pills. And I was like, I am not giving him Oxy. I have a nephew that is addicted. I will never give. And my husband was like, Juliet, if this is really painful, you have to like take the edge off of him. And Truman was like, I'm not taking it because he's been through this with his, and this was a number of years ago. The doctor's like, listen, if you do Advil and Tylenol, let's just see, but I'm letting you know he's going to be in a lot of pain. I was like, this kid is like, he has a high pain tolerance. Okay. We went home. He took Advil and Tylenol for 2 days. That was it. He's like, I don't need it anymore. They actually had to take a hose to put up his nose to suck all the stuff out. The doctor was like, I've never seen someone be able to sit there, close their eyes and not have to take breaks. I've done this. I do the surgery all the time. This kid is incredible. So he was like, what do you think about it? He's like, well, you have to do it. Right. And the doctor's like, yeah. He's like, so I just go into my mind, like, I'm not going to stop you because you have to get it done. So why am I going to freak myself out? And the doctor was like, oh my God. And you didn't need painkillers? And he's like, no. But so if I was a parent that didn't ask questions and trust that my kid was like going to be able to handle this, he's like, I mean, it was painful, but like whatever, I can handle it. They would have given him Oxy and what could have happened? And he was 14 or 13.
I always say, they always talk about doctors. We've talked about this many times, bedside manners. Doctors don't have bedside manners because they've never been in that bed.
Right.
If you're a doctor, you haven't been not that, they've been through, shit. Every person in the world's been through shit, but you've never been addicted. You've never been down that road. Oh, it's painful. Every single person's definition of painful is different. And, this is where I have a problem with a lot of different things. Has he had that surgery?
No, that's right.
No.
Yeah. Who's telling you it's painful?
Correct.
Yes, they had to put something up his nose and cut something out. So yes, I mean, there was a lot of business going on up there.
I've never heard of that surgery before, till you just mentioned that. So, it's going to take 4 to 6 weeks to fix that, that broken ankle. Or people always ask me that, every single one of us are our own. There's nothing that's replicant. It could be shorter, it could be longer, could be not as painful. What is your definition of that? It's, you have to ask, you have to understand where it's coming from. Let's, take in perspective. Was it you and me talking yesterday? What's your definition of tall? I can't remember,
Oh, yeah, yeah. That's because you said he was short. And I was like,
right.
Okay, well, you're very tall. So like, what's your definition?
Correct. What's his definition of pain? You can't, so it's whenever you go into, it's painful. What does that mean? Every person is different. You have to know that.
And that's why with doctors. Yeah. Go ahead.
No,
but that's what's so upsetting.
And look at who you are and what they say. And 99.9% of the doctors have never had it. And I'll give you another, I'll expand this.
Yeah. And because I had experience.
Obviously, I've had a lot of injuries.
With my nephew and my sister. And drugs, I was like, are you insane? I'm not giving him oxy. I just have and this is when we were in the real thick of it. I was like, absolutely not. And he's like, well, I can give him something less. And I'm like, I am not giving him a painkiller. But then, my husband said, he's like, honey, I understand where you're coming from, but that's not fair then to make Truman suffer. And then, when we talked to Truman's like, I'm not taking any of that stuff. And I was like, right. Because he, was like, I'm not becoming, my cousin, right, who he looked up to, watched play lacrosse, and then all of a sudden is the shell of this person. But you're right. And that's the thing. Doctors scare people because he also could have been a kid that's scared. Well, okay, yes, I don't want to be in pain, right? I'm going to take that. And I could have been a mom that's like, I don't want him to be in pain. But I was like, I don't want him to be addicted. Like, he's going to have to suck this pain up. I've been in pain. I didn't take painkillers, but that's also not okay either. So as you said, you have to know yourself. You have to gone through the experiences, and the doctor's saying this is going to be really, really, really painful. And Truman was like, it was uncomfortable. He's like, I don't know what and I was like, he does have a high pain tolerance, 100%. We're very aware of that. He always kind of has as a kid. Like, I'd be like, what, just like you stabbed yourself in the face with a stick and you're not crying and you have a hole in your face? Like, okay. I think we need to go to the doctor, but maybe we just put a butterfly Band-Aid on it. I don't know, because you don't seem to be bothered by this. So there's that, but and so as you said, but that's the scary thing with the medical world. But that's also why there's times where I don't trust it, because it's like, this doctor could have scared us to doing it. He's like, well, I'm only giving you 5. But then, as you said, if his body got addicted, what would have done and gone there as a kid?
And that's, again, the addiction world, the opiates, the understanding of what it is. They've never been there. They don't understand. They don't get it. So it's your job to understand it. That's why I talk about it, is understand how quickly it happens and how quickly it spirals. That feeling, how quickly your body takes it and wants it. And needs it, and where it ends up, like you said, that heroin's so easy to get to. Again, give an example. Same guy. It's funny, exactly same guy talking about the hips. He had his knee replaced. came back. Obviously, knee replacement is pretty major. In a ton of pain. And I was doing the same thing with him. Nurses were coming to the house to work on it. We're 2 or 3 weeks in, and my dad was doing the same thing. Back in Canada, had his knee replaced, and keep doing this. So they can't get. You're not getting better. Not getting better. I'm like, well, you need to do this, and this. Now he says that to the nurse. She's arguing with me. I tell this to my dad. They go and do some different exercises. Like, oh, my knee feels better. Yes, because I've been there. I'm not, I've lived these experience. Nurse hasn't and was completely 100% wrong and everything. Mike's, my buddy Mike, he's like, what the fuck? How do you why don't they tell me? Because they don't know. They read in a book. This is what you're supposed to do. No, they don't even, if you have major knee surgery, your quad shuts down for 12 weeks. So if your quad shuts down, that's what helps you, keep the pressure off of it. If your quad's not wearing, they got no muscle, you're just going bone on bone. And I'm like, Mike, we need to refire your quad. We need to get the muscles back in. Nurse is yelling at me. I'm like, he goes and does it, changes his life. Because I've been in that bed. I've been addicted. I've been laughed at. I've been bullied. I've bullied, and the list goes on. It's the understanding of what that all is, from start to finish. We'll continue to say it's the why, it's the relatability, it's the understanding of what happened, and digging to the root to find it, not just pulling the leaf off the tree.
Yeah. And I'm going to leave it there because that's beautiful. Guys, that was kind of just a touch, and we'll keep you, in the loop on this, because I know Brent will also share more of his story on getting sober and all of that. And we'll keep you updated on my situation. But it all comes down to the self-esteem and the understanding and the trauma, but also that everyone goes through things. As I said, it's not something I sat and shared about, but it's something that sometimes I've suffered with. I do have people that I talk to about it, but it is, it's not an easy place to be. So thank you for joining Word Blindness, Dyslexia Exposed. And, what do we always say? Rate, review, and share, because you do not know who needs to hear this. You do not know who's sitting there suffering in silence and needs to hear this story. So send it to as many people as you know. Thank you again for joining.